Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of the Right Circle Special, an initiative of Prabha Khaitan Foundation presented by Shree Cement Limited. Established by Dr. Prabha Khaitan Foundation provides platforms to caregivers, committed individuals, and like-minded institutions to implement cultural, educational, literary, and social welfare projects in India. The pandemic has not been able to deter the foundation's noble cause. The foundation has shifted gears using the virtual world to continue with the various sessions to keep up the spirits of its patrons. The Right Circle strives to bring together authors and their readers in an informal and engaging setting. The sessions are structured around the life and works of the author, followed by an interaction with the audience. The Right Circle started its journey from Jaipur and now has sessions across India and even overseas in Oxford, Birmingham, New York, and Oslo. Today's session is truly special as we have with us not one but two guests, Mr. Rakeysh Omprakash Mehra and Ms. Reeta Ramamurthy Gupta. Rakeysh Omprakash Mehra occupies a reverent mihrab of his own in the annals of Indian filmmaking. After working on almost 200 advertising films and a documentary, he found his calling on the big screen. His cinema is honest, intense, powerful, and holds a mirror to society. His thoughtfully crafted portraits are intricately detailed and close to his milieu. His brand of socially conscious progressive filmmaking has its own signature. His work is archetypal, socio-political, and philosophical, spawning genres from unforgettable sports biopics to hard-hitting, inspirational, youth-oriented cinema. As movie buffs, we wait for his films to enjoy them in the theaters as he always delivers delightfully with memorable mellow music, moving, intelligent cinema to ponder after. His legendary films have always left us becoming better patriots. The second guest of today's session, Reeta Ramamurthy Gupta, hails from the marketing world and applies her vast knowledge of connecting with her audience through her writing. Her ability to bring pages alive with a lexical diversity that assimilates cultures and timelines and gripping parenthetical narratives has created a unique imprint in Indian writing in English. Her work reflects empathy and genuineness. She is credited with the internationally acclaimed Red Dot Experiment, a decadal six-nation study on how culture impacts communication. Her previous book, Rescript Your Life, was published by Rupa Publications. In conversation with the guest is Ms. Rishma Gill, Ehsas Woman of Chandigarh. Now, I would request the audience to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was so kind.
Hi, good evening, Rakeysh ji. Good evening, Reeta ji. It's so wonderful to have both of you join us. We've been looking forward to this for a while now.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us over.
So to begin with, I think it would be really interesting to know how this book came about. Rakeysh ji, are you somebody who has made notes, all along the journey of your life or kept a journal? And then organically, all of it kind of came together and got compiled into this wonderful book? Or did you one fine day realize that, okay, now is the time for me to start sharing more of my life, more of behind the scenes? So how did it all come about?
I guess it's a mix of everything. Now that I look back, it was all, as you said, very much organic. And it's not like thought out, kept journals or notes. Fortunately for me, being a writer, director, and a producer, your work gets chronicled into movies, and they are there. So, and they always act as reminders, and they take you back to the reason you made the film
Yeah.
as such to begin with. And then the more time you give your movies, the more they tell you and they talk back to you as to why you made me. And rather than I've never ever felt that I've made a film. I always feel the film makes me and has made me to whatever it is I'm worth as such in my own eyes. I'm not talking about the commercial world or something. So I after making my first film, Ux, with Mr. Bachchan and Manoj Bajpayee, Ravina, and Nandita Das, I really enjoyed the process. This was approximately like 21 years ago. And I thought, okay, this could be my calling. I keep that very open. I still don't know where I will be tomorrow. So at that time, I felt like that. And I had not gone to any film school. I hadn't assisted anybody. So I didn't know what cinema was, even though I had made my first film, to be very honest. So I started reading a lot about my favorite films. I used to travel to London a lot for editing my advertising films, and there was the treasure of cinema history. You could go to a bookstore, go to the basement, and there were thousands of books of your favorite movies, of your favorite directors. Whether it was Akira Kurosawa, the master Japanese director, or Fellini, from the master from Italy, or Krzysztof Kieslowski. You kept reading about them and their journeys and their reason to make the movies, including the art house movement, the parallel movement, the American films, as such. Whenever I came back home, unfortunately, books so far and few. We never about the makers, about what went behind the film, what was the thought. And I always felt a gap. There were a few books on Satyajit Ray's movies. Other than that, I could never find my favorite films like Do Aankhein Bara Haath or a Pyasa or a Bandhani. And as time passed and I had a small body of work, it felt like, why not share it before I forget it all. And then, like the universe has to conspire.
Yeah.
And then you need a partner in crime. And here she was, Reeta ji, and like a perfect partner in crime out there. And she then, she had held all the shots and beautifully heard me out, silently, patiently, and made some sense of whatever I was blabbering, I guess.
Yeah, which leads me to my next question, which is, how did you both meet, and how did the entire project come into being and come to life eventually, and sort of how long did it take, this entire process of getting it all down on paper?
Rakeysh, you want me to take that?
Please, yeah.
So I was very obviously inspired after Rang De Basanti, as the whole nation was. And we were doing a campaign in 2009 during the general elections, which was called It's Cool to Vote. There was survey after survey that was talking about youth apathy towards the electoral process. And I felt that if there was one voice that could cut across to them, despite the apathy, it would be Rakeysh ji's voice. So I had actually gone and met him and requested him to be part of an event that we were doing. And we were able to roll out It's Cool to Vote campaign across, I think, over 7,000 retail stores in India at that point in 2009. And that's how we actually first met. Yeah.
So, Rakeysh ji, let's talk a little bit about, your childhood. Now, I'll delve a little further into, the different chapters in the book. You grew up in Delhi, very far removed from the world of Bollywood and of cinema. And you mentioned in your book that your father worked for the Claridge's Hotel in Delhi. So take us through some of your fondest childhood memories. I know there's a bit about when you got your hands on the Philips mono record player and how the film Mughal-e-Azam really fired up your imagination. So I'm sure our viewers would like to hear a little bit more.
Nothing unique about my childhood memories. I think all our childhoods are the best time of our lives as such. And that is where, the formation happens. Thanks to your parents, your neighborhood, your gurus, your teachers, and your friends, most importantly, I think, because they are the choices you make as such. So, like everybody else, life was full of adventure. It was a new day every day as such, and you would discover something new. In this process, you're talking about the Philips mono player. Yeah, we didn't have a TV or a refrigerator or a phone or a car or a scooter, but definitely we, luck by chance, we got a Philips mono player in a Christmas Eve raffle draw as a lucky winner, which was gifted to my father from the winner as a tip because he was working in the hotel. And then it was kept, and all of us used to look at it because records were too expensive to buy.
Yeah.
So one day I had the courage and dragged my mother to, this Chor Bazaar, which happens in Old Delhi. And there we found this long playing record, the whole dialogue soundtrack of Mughal-e-Azam. I didn't know what Mughal-e-Azam was, but it looked good. The picture was very nice, so we bought it. The cover picture on the LP. And then we used to play that record for the next year or so, every day, every night. And like Reeta ji is so beautifully put it in the book, it became the lullaby for the Mehra family. And me and my sister were very close to that, and I would hear it back from school. I would put it on. Late nights, we would put it on. It was like magical. And I would imagine the film. My father was also an usher in a cinema theater earlier, before he joined Claridge's. So he must be seeing the same film 100 times, putting people on the seats. So that also somewhere deep down, he was a cinema buff and he knew a lot about movies. It was not like my job ends there. That's where your passion begins.
Right.
Where your working hours end. I believe we take our work home. It's a lot of people say don't take your work home. I don't know what that means because that's your life, and you have to take your life home and then bring your home to your life back. So it's all a khichdi actually. And we used to get treats during our birthdays. Used to be very special because Dad would take us to see a movie. There was a special treat, and these theaters are old British theaters in Connaught Place in Delhi, Regal Odeon Plaza, and seeing the old classic out there, Jal Bin Machli, Nitya Bin Bijli, Pakiza, Do Biga Zameen, all these movies. And the cinema of Raj Kapoor, Gurudat, Bimal Roy, Basuda, it was amazing. And those memories stayed with me. I think that's where somewhere the seed must have been born. Never in my wildest dream, I had a career option of being a writer and a director. I had not thought of that. I think I just went with the flow. And like I shared with you earlier, I'm still going with the flow. I don't know where tomorrow the river will turn.
And Reeta ji, what was it like for you growing up? I mean, did you consider even when you were a small child that you'd be writing? And were you very attached to Bollywood? Or did you have a completely different sort of, backdrop to your life as a child, and cinema was not really a big part of it?
I remember starting writing with poetry, and I think this was when I was 7 or 8 years old. And do you remember the lawn tennis champion Steffi Graf?
Yes, of course.
She was such a favorite of mine, and I had found ways to write 20 different poems for her. And because I was so fascinated by her achievement and her composure, and the fact that she was winning all these Grand Slams and the Olympics in the same year, and I believe she holds the record for something called the Golden Slam. So I used to write her poems, and the Indian Express, which was, which is still a very prominent newspaper today, they found a way to get in touch with me and publish all her poems. And so that is when I realized that I enjoyed writing. And yes, I think after that, I have spent such a large portion of any free time available to me reading. That I think the only natural thing, we all have a second nature. And I think the only thing I really enjoy and what brings me alive is writing. It's always been like that for me.
Right. So you both have that common thread of, having sports people as your larger than life influences.
And, I must say this, I am absolutely inspired to be speaking with Rakeysh ji under the aegis of the Prabha Ketan Foundation, because that's another very courageous lady to translate Simone de Beauvoir's book, The Second Sex, into Hindi.
Yeah.
I think that requires a lot of courage.
Absolutely.
And just because I don't know how many of the youngsters today are aware of her work and the number of translations that are available of her work in Hindi, and also the works she has translated from English. So this is a very, very august platform.
Yes, and she has a fantastic body of work to her credit.
Yes.
Right. So Rakeysh, how did you then transition into Bollywood? I mean, I do believe in the book that there's a story of a monkey jumping on you while you were at that time probably not in a frame of mind to be in the Bollywood world. And you didn't realize that you were on your way to such massive stardom, but there was that bit about the monkey, which really is very interesting.
I don't know where Bollywood is, sorry. So my exposure was first to Hindi cinema.
Okay.
And as such. So I like any other middle class person, you finish school, you want to get into college. From you get college, you are worrying about the degree, and you get the degree, you want the naukri. So my first naukri was selling vacuum cleaners for a company called Eureka Forbes. It was amazing. It was very hectic, but it was amazing because I got to meet a lot of people. And it was door-to-door salesman. And it was a very funny sight, in the heat of Delhi, to wear a tie and get into a DTC bus with a large suitcase in which there was a vacuum cleaner. And then to knock, hundreds of doors, and out of that, 99 were slammed on your face. So you understood that rejection was very normal, very early in life. But at the same time, connectivity. They were very kind people also. And then improvising on it. So I didn't work there for long. I worked for like 3 to 4 months, and in which fortunately I created a national record in sales, made some money, and me and my friend, we started garments fabrication. We took an old rundown factory, my friend from college. He's there in the book. We are still great friends, and that factory grew from like 7 tailors to 300 tailors in 18 months. and we were fabricating garments for exporters for some very well-known brands like Gap and Banana Republic, Giorgio Armani, a lot of Western brands. And what it also taught me is I tasted blood of being an entrepreneur, of being on your own. That was one. Two, the tailors I met, जिनको हम कारीगर बोलते हैं, they came from Bengal, they came from Bihar, they came from Rajasthan, and they came from UP, Eastern UP. So they all used to work in groups. They came from Haryana, and they used to listen to their own music.
Yeah.
All these. And they used to listen to their own folk music, their own pulp music. And it was like every day I would enter a music class, and they were all farmers. And the state of farmers in our country. They're not well provided for, and off seasons they would come to the cities looking for this work, migrating. So I got to know them. I got to know their lives and all that. But my heart was somewhere in advertising. And advertising was not the way we know it today. It was a very upper lip kind of profession and a very British profession, and you had to be this very English person to be in advertising, and I was a completely opposite of that as such. But yeah, I got into advertising thanks to a friend of mine who was the captain of my cricket club and later on became a very celebrated art director in the Singh. And then I worked on a client called Mazda Motor Corporation, Swaraj Mazda, a Chandigarh-based client.
Yeah,
your city.
That's right.
And I used to travel to Chandigarh twice a week from Delhi, and those were also very disturbing days for Punjab. But matlab, dal roti to kamani hai, so wo to used to come to Chandigarh all the while, fell in love with the state and the city, and that's why it's reflected in so many of my films, whether it's Bhag Milkha, Bhag or Mirzia.
Right.
So everything is, and there, the Japanese clients, they liked me for some reason, which I still cannot figure out, and they sent me to Japan for an orientation program, and Japanese-fied me and made kind of, got the discipline of how to do things. So I worked there in a car factory, in a dealership, in a petrol pump, in an advertising agency, came back, got into another agency which was bigger as such, and there accidentally I made an in-house advertising film on Hero Honda. I produced it. I didn't write it, or creatively I wasn't involved, but as a client servicing person. So I think I tasted blood there.
Yeah.
And it stayed in my head and brought me to Bombay 6 months, 9 months later. Now Mumbai. And I thought I'd arrived, and but next 7 years there was no work whatsoever. And it was very far and few, I would get a small 10-second ad, basically leftovers from people who didn't want to do something that came to me. But yeah, it kind of carried on, and it was the first 7-10 years were like huge struggle. But then Bharti was there. Bharti is, I'm her husband, and he is that 101% better. It's not the better half, but she is the full half in the relationship.
I love how you say that I am her husband. I think that's wonderful.
No, that's true. And absolutely, I don't know why we say it the other way around. In fact, the reality is completely different. How it plays out in the real world. And yet it is the graciousness of the ladies of the world who with a smile, adopt a name.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I always found that very funny. If at all, it should be the other way around. They are the creators. They take the family forward. They are the one who bear the child. All you do is just offer, some sperms, and that's it. And that doesn't make you the this thing. It's a lot to do with economics, I think. For the longest time, the man has been the breadwinner.
Yeah.
So, and he's exploited that relationship, and not in the right way, I must say. So, but yeah, things are changed, have changed. I'm not saying changing, have changed beautifully. And
I have to have a conversation with my husband after this session is done.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't blame me for that, please. And yeah, so Bhati sustained, and then I got to do an ad film. I was producing it earlier. When we got married, my partner, we separated, but I kept on producing, and then one day I directed an ad film. Somebody mentioned to me, "Why don't you direct one?" And I directed, and it won all the awards. And there I was. There was enough work for me, and there was rise in advertising, and worked for all the brands, not just in India but abroad. I got to work for brands in Japan, in Europe, whether it was Pepsi, Coke out here, Yamaha, Honda, anything you name it, they were all there. Got to do an ad film with Mr. Bachchan, his first ad film ever. There were a set of 5 films for BPL. One thing led to another, and I offered him a script. In fact, many years before I had met Gulzar Bhai, and I'd asked him to write a script for me, write Devdas for me. And there I went as a clean-shaven 23-year-old boy, didn't know how to make movies, but he indulged me, gave me a cup of tea. And 25 years later, when he actually wrote for my film, I asked him, Gulzar Bhai, do you remember that boy who came, sneaked into your office, telling lies? And he said, "Bachchu, मैं दाढ़ी बढ़ाने से ये थोड़ी होता है मैं भूल जाऊँ." So he wrote for my first film, Aks, and then he wrote beautifully. He wrote Mirzia for me. He gave me the best gift in Bhag Milkha Bhag with the shloka from the Gurbani.
Yeah.
When Milkha Singh is running and his feet is, he's nurtured me. He's like a father figure, to say the least, and much more than that, like a guru. And then Aks happened. Like I said earlier, I enjoyed the process. But I realized that cinema is much more than I actually know. It is a much bigger universe. It's absolutely crazy. There is so much going on. And I started watching a lot of world cinema. And I kept asking myself, why can't we take our movies to the world? I was hungry for that. I was greedy for that. And not in a way to tell Western ideas made in India, or for the festival circuit, to take it to the common man. Can I do that? And I'm still trying that. It's not an easy task. Maybe the generation after me will be more successful. I'll keep trying and keep failing at that. But having said that, Rang De Basanti did travel, Bhag Milkha Bhag did travel, Delhi 6 did travel beyond the festival circuit. It went to the theaters and did some very good business. Got dubbed in different languages. And it's a constant endeavor with every film of mine should not be limited to just Hindi audiences. It should first transcend audiences in India and then go across the borders. And the beauty is to tell Indian stories to the world. That is what I really love. The more Indian you get, or the more colloquial you get, the more world you become.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in short, not that has been the journey.
Hmm. You know what really stands out in The Stranger in the Mirror, your book, and it gives it its very unique appeal and makes it very different from the other autobiographies out there. All of these first-person accounts, from various people, including actors, musicians, producers, your wife, your children. How did this idea come about, and what made you want to include these accounts? And I'd, love to get your perspective on this as well, Reeta ji.
So, in the initial few meetings, I realized that Rakeysh ji, he trusts every artist 100%. He starts you off at 100. It is for you to work your way down by, proving that you're not worthy of that. So I realized that somebody who has always stepped back and let the experts do their job, whether it is, the cinematographers or the actors or the writers or the editors that he has worked with, I realized that bringing a narrative like that to the fore must include the people he has trusted as well to bring his dreams to fulfillment. And as we started speaking to people, I realized two things, Rishma. One is that all his friends, they opened their heart out 500%. They were so forthcoming. I felt like I had known them from his narrations, and they were so, their memories, they really made an effort to remember things and share them with us so that the book would become more beautiful, more enriched by the anecdotes that they were sharing. Because a book is not just about observation, it's also about little incidents. It's also about, the spicy little touches that anecdotes can bring. The second thing was that all the people I was talking to had their unique voices. And when we were transcribing it later, I just felt that I should not come in the way between the reader and the person who's talking. I wanted to retain their flavor, and I wanted to retain the sanctity of that friendship and the professional relationship that Rakeysh ji had established with them. So that's how we decided to do it in first person. Rakeysh ji, would you agree?
I think it's completely agree. Yeah, agree and a half. Absolutely. There's a term like that. And it is, filmmaking is a collaborative art form. And as a business also is collaborative. Even your producer is collaborating with you. Even so, whether it's your crew behind the camera and the talent you work with in front of the camera, in parts make that one film. You have to mother the process. And as a director, the closest I have ever felt to femininity is as a director. It's like, you conceive a child and then it grows inside you. Then one day you have to go through the labor pains. And then the child grows after that, once it belongs to the world.
Yeah.
And it's the closest I felt to that experience. I don't know if I'm belittling the experience, but I'm in awe of the experience of motherhood itself. And so being collaborative, rather than me, because everybody has their own journeys and have their own experiences of being part of that journey, it was best to hear them out and also get different perspectives for the same thing. So I made Rang De Basanti for a reason. I'm from my Air Force school, and when MiGs were dropping from the sky because of a corruption scandal in the defense ministry, it made me angry. So I had to do something about it. So we made this film and called Rang De Basanti, which kind of juxtapose the youth of the past who gave their lives standing for an ideal, not just fighting against the British, but they were fighting against exploitation of one human being over another.
Yeah.
And like Bhagat Singh said, I don't want independence from the Goras to be enslaved by the Kalas one day of our own kind, or wahi ho raha hai abhi. So yeah, so I made it for that reason. But it was very important to know what was Amir Khan's reason, what was A.R. Rahman's reason, what was Wahida Rahman's reason. You know, these are all legendary people who have some very, very serious body of work. They have contributed a lot to Indian cinema. What was their reason to do the film? And the association. And for me, you know, a movie doesn't begin or end with shooting. It begins when the idea was born. You start making the film in your head then. And then when it takes shapes, and then when it's, like I said, like a child is delivered, it comes to the, and then most important thing in the journey of a movie for me is after it is released. Actually, it starts after 5 years of his making. Is the film still alive? Is it still growing? Is it still in the collective subconsciousness?
Yeah.
When I still look back, am I proud of it? Or even if I'm ashamed of it, that's not a problem. Have I learned from it? Do I still own it? Is it still one of my fondest memory? The journey of the film. I'm not talking in the box office because that vanishes after the first week. Nobody remembers. So Reshma, if I were to ask you what are your favorite 5 films, and you will give me 5 names, or 5 books, you'll give me 5 names, or 10. Yeah. But if I ask you, suppose you said, somebody asked me what are your favorite 5 films, then I would say Guide and Pyasa, and you know, among Indian films, and I would say Pather Panchali, and I would say Tevar Magan, and or you know, stuff like that. Then if somebody asked me, tell me the business of Guide, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Was Pyasa a hit or a flop? I didn't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
So that's the way I approach cinema. That you're creating something for perpetuity. You're creating something which should transcend you. It goes beyond you. It should become bigger than you. Any which way, it's going to outlast you. You're going to die one day. So all of us are going to. That is certain. So why not create something that will not die?
I think one thing I'd like to add about, you know, the book itself, Reshma, is that, you know, even as people, we are all so multidimensional.
Yeah.
Isn't it? There's not just one, and that's why I think man invented the kaleidoscope, because he realized that the pieces could rearrange themselves to create a completely different form. And from each person that spoke about Rakeysh in the book, you get a completely unique perspective about the man. And I think readers must demand, you know, that kind of honesty in a memoir. And that's what they can relate to, and that's what can help them as well. You know, even if there's one filmmaker out there who reads the book and, you know, decides that he's going to pursue his dreams, I think the job is done.
I agree. I do agree with you. Rakeysh, you mentioned in your book the legend of Milkha Singh, you know, which was woven into all of these inspirational stories that you heard as a child. And it's been the same from me. I'm from Chandigarh. I've seen him, you know, playing golf at the golf club. And I'm Sikh. My grandparents migrated to India at the time of partition. So these are the stories that really resonate with millions of people, especially, you know, up north. But I would love to hear from you about Milkha Sir, the man, and your experience working with him.
it was absolutely amazing. I read his autobiography. Actually, I didn't read it. Somebody narrated it to me because it was in Gurmukh. My uncle narrated it to me. He knew Gurmukh. And he read it. He had tears in his eyes when he came the next day. And he said, "Beta, ये बहुत अच्छी कहानी है, इसको बनाओ." तो मैंने कहा आप कहानी बताएं. मेरे को तो मिल्खा सर के अचीवमेंट्स मालूम थी as a sportsman. And I more than that, I knew the jokes that were around him, which were, as kids we loved this. एक बार घर पे चोर आ गया, वो भागे उसके पीछे और उसको ओवरटेक कर गए क्योंकि वो और आगे निकल गए, क्योंकि उनको लगा चोर भाग रहा है तो मैं रेस ही दौड़ लेता हूँ, बाकी तो हो जाएगा. And all that. So और भी बड़े उनके, तो उन्होंने जब कहानी सुनाई वो दिल पे लगी. I felt it deep down. It hit the spot. I fixed up an appointment with him and I flew to Chandigarh. And I still remember there was a 5:30 flight back that day. I took the morning flight. I thought 1-2 घंटे बात करेंगे, थोड़ा समझेंगे, आ जाएंगे. And we had a 2-hour lunch. Nimmi auntie made some amazing food. And we kept talking. तो उन्होंने बोला बेटा फ्लाइट का टाइम है, आधा घंटा लगेगा एयरपोर्ट पहुंचने में. मैंने कहा वो जाने दीजिए फ्लाइट. I didn't even bother to cancel it. I just didn't go. And ऐसे अगले दिन रुका, फिर अगले दिन then I checked into the hotel there. उसी दिन उसी रात को, and I stayed there for 7 days. Went to the market. I still remember. I think 21 sector, bought toothbrush for myself. Went to the Khadi Vandar, bought some kurta pajamas, and that is it. Because I had gone without a change, without anything, and I kept hearing his story again and again. The same story. I told him, "Tell me again tomorrow." I feel he started trusting me. I'm ghul mil gaye. And twice in his eyes, when he used to tell me about his aap beeti, let's not say story, I would notice tears in his eyes. And once when he described the massacre of his family during the ethnic violence of the partition, and he had as much pain for the other side also. I could understand that also. And everyone in Punjab has that on both sides. Because outsiders कुछ भी बताते हैं, कुछ भी color देते हैं. जिन पे बीती है उनको मालूम है. Then the second time when he used to talk about how he lost the Olympic gold medal, how it just slipped out of his fingers because he did the technical strategic mistake of looking back when he was leading the race. He thought he was running too fast. So that is where I got the story. And I sat down in the night and wrote the first scene that he enters the Olympic Stadium. And when he looks back at his past and the demons of the massacre of his father. And that is what haunts him all his life. Until he goes back to partition. जो आपका वतन है, you see there's a difference between वतन and country. तो जब वो अपने वतन वापस जाते हैं, and he actually purifies himself with crying. Crying is the purest form of any emotion. It's not laughing, it's not anything else. When you cry, you wash everything with that. Provided the tears are true. And this time when he looks back or looks on the side, उनका हंसता हुआ बचपन उनके साथ दौड़ता है. And the country in which he had grown up to hate, he got the biggest respect of the title of the Flying Sikh. From the person who had invaded India 3 times in the last 10 years.
Right.
So that is the story. That is the story I wanted to tell. And these are the 2 scenes I wrote, and I finalized in the 7 days. And I said, Milkha sir, I'm making a film. Fortunately, Jeev was there. Jeev Milkha was also there, and he immediately made it happen. And he had many offers. He had offers for the rights of his story for, 1.5 crore rupees, 2 crores. And he gave it to me for 1 rupee. Because he said, "Bachche tu hi bana ye film ye tere." मैंने तेरी फिल्म देखी नहीं है, बट जीव बोल रहा है कि तूने अच्छी फिल्म बनाई है, रंग दे बसंती, तो तू ही बना। तो that the relationship became more than a person I was making a film on. It became like a very, very deep family, more than a family, you know, much more than that. We understood each other. I spoke to him about my dark times, my dark ages, my problems. जो उनके आगे कुछ ज्यादा थे नहीं, बट आप जब बातें करते हैं तो बातें होने लगती हैं। एंड साथ साथ में एक फिल्म भी बन गई। तो वो was the byproduct of the relationship, if you really ask me. And they say he's no more. I say Milkha Singh never died. The Milkha Singhs of the world would never die.
Will never die.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. You know, we've had, I don't even know where the time went because we've had such interesting conversations and there were so many more questions that I had in mind. But I think we need to move over to our viewers. And so I'm going to just see what they've written in here to ask you. So I've got a question from Gurleen Kaur who says, good evening, sir. For you personally as a director, which work of yours would you consider as the most challenging and why?
Gurleen, thanks for your question. But like I said, a mother loves all her children and they're all equal to her. And so all my work is very close to my heart, and for different reasons as such. They are not similar, but they are not repeating themselves. It's, you know, एक रोमांटिक फिल्म बना दी, अभी 10 और बनाते हैं, एक कॉमेडी बना दी तो हिट हो गई, तो एक रंग दे बसंती बना दी तो अब रंग दे, तो millions of people ask me रंग दे बसंती 2 कब आ रही? अब वो जो कहना था वो कह दिया, उसका 2 का क्या मतलब है? ये जेम्स बॉन्ड थोड़ी है। तो all my work is very close to, yeah, absolutely. And especially the work which has things which have not performed so well at the box office. They are even closer to me because those are the ones that support me a lot, and I have to support them. They are the ones who give me strength.
We've got another one from Deepa Mishra. Good evening, Rakeysh ji and Reeta ji. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. My question is that films have an unparalleled power to influence culture. Does it bother you to see that power abused?
Reeta ji, please take that.
So I think if we've just come out of the pandemic, Rishma. Deepa, did you say the name of the person was?
That's right.
Deepa, we've just come out of the pandemic. And one thing I realized is that art came to everyone's rescue. Most certainly, medicine came to everyone's rescue as well. But if you look at the way people spent their time as a family, together, as individuals, I think art gave us perspective, art allowed us to think, and whatever the voice of art, whether it is Picasso or Rakeysh Omprakash Mehra ji, the decision of how that art has impacted you is yours and yours alone. Nobody tells you how to respond to a stimulus. The response lies in your hands. So take your call, be entertained by art, be aggravated by art, be energized by art. That's entirely your call. But the artist wanted to say something. And as long as the world is a democracy, the artist has every right to say it.
There's one last question from Preeti Gill. And she asked, which film of yours is closest to your heart? I know that in your book, you did mention Rakeysh ji, even though, I can understand that they're all very close to your heart. But you did mention Delhi 6, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I concede to that. I think the film that is the closest to my heart will be the next film I'm making. It's always the next one. or the
Sure.
present part. But Delhi 6, yes. Delhi 6 is memories of my childhood days. They are the questions I asked myself in my growing up days. I'm from my parental homes are in Old Delhi, and every big town of India or the world has, a old district. Even if you go to Rome, Italy, there will be an old district. Ahmedabad has, Hyderabad has, Chennai has, everything. And these old districts are the melting pot of various cultures and religions. I have grown up in that melting pot, which was predominantly, if you enter Chandni Chowk, there's Chandni Chowk is this famous avenue in Old Delhi, which is like, so you enter on your left, you'll see the Gauri Shankar Mandir. Diagonally opposite that, you would see the Methodist Church. Diagonally opposite Methodist Church is Gurudwara Seesganj. Opposite Gurudwara Seesganj is Haldiram.
Yeah.
Haldiram se pehle is McDonald's. Right at the end of the street is the Masjid, Fatehpuri Masjid, a very famous masjid. And when you turn around, you see the tricolor fluttering on Red Fort. Those are the streets I've grown kites on and I've played cricket on. And I've grown up there. But at the drop of the hat, there used to be communal tension, which we have witnessed. As a child, how do you describe that? I always felt, aisa kyun ho raha hai? Delhi 6 was very close to me, where I questioned religion. And and very candidly, I questioned it. Why are we talking about breaking mandirs and masjids? And is that the solution as such? Look at the 1984 riots. Sorry, my idea is not to ki zakham ko hara karo. My idea with my movies has always been to apply a healing balm, because there are even with Tufan, which recently released, is always ki we have so many wounds in our life. Rather than our job as artists, as filmmakers, as storytellers should be to apply a soothing balm on them, not to fir se unko nanga kar. I did that with Bhag Milkha Bhag, with Delhi 6 I tried that. But sometimes kadvi goli hajam nahi hoti, to wo bhi hai. Because I showed a mirror in Delhi 6 and say, देखो अल्लाह चाहिए इसमें देख लो, भगवान चाहिए इसमें देख लो, वो तुम्हारे अंदर है. और डीमन भी चाहिए, जिसको मैंने काला बंदर बोला था, वो भी तुम्हारे ही अंदर है. बाहर कुछ नहीं, किसी को दोषी ठहराने से कुछ होने वाला है नहीं. तो these were very naive and stupid questions I grew up with in my own head. And they have always haunted me a lot. And I still haven't found the answer. There can only be one. So it is. There is, what I've learned to believe is there is humanity and then there's politics. They're two different things.
Absolutely. I think we've got an audio question coming in from Malvinder Bagre.
Ji. Ji, Malvinder ji.
Malvinder ji, can you unmute yourself, please?
A very good evening to all.
Good evening, Malvinder ji.
Yeah, I'm talking from Punjab, the royal city Patiala. It was an amazing session hearing Mr. Rakeysh, Omprakash and the Mrs. Gupta. Well, I just had one crisp question that we have addressed all the issues and your works have been great. There is one big issue in Indian society which is undercover and usually not addressed. That is mental issue. So are you planning to make something on that?
Malvinder ji, I have to be the right person to make a film on such a complex issue. Maybe I haven't grown up yet to address it in a movie and a subject of mine. But having heard you, I will definitely, in the back of our mind, in the subconscious, you planted something. a seed. आपने बीज बोया है, अब if the seed has to grow, it will grow on itself. It's वो मेरे हाथ में नहीं. So I would love to take on, but it is not a. Yes, I am attempting a film which is not actually mental issue, but it's more on Alzheimer's and broken families, which is in the writing right now. And it's the writing is over. Now we want to shoot it, but not maybe after the next film I make. And it's with Mr. Bachchan. So, but mental issue, yes, I think we should make more films like that. Because cinema does have an impact, yeah.
I think we've got time for one last question from Priyanka Kothari. Since you mentioned James Bond, did Daniel ever audition for Rang De? And which part was it for?
No, most certainly we're very keen to work with him. And he had also auditioned for the Bond part. And our executive producers were David and Adam Bowling and David. And I had the reading from him, and we had casted him for James McKinley's part, who was the British officer in the past, who walks the revolutionaries to the gallows. But then Mr. Craig, he got to play Bond, obviously, and he said, he had told that I'm being shortlisted for that. If that comes through, then I won't be able to take up Rang De Basanti, which is very, very understandable, is undebatable also. But yes, yeah. That was the Bond connection. The widest Bond connection I've had in my life.
I think that's a great note to wrap up the question and answer session with now. I wanted to thank both of you so much for taking out the time this evening. It's been such a fun and interesting session. And I would urge everybody out there to go and get a copy of the book, Stranger in the Mirror. It's got some fantastic stories, which I've personally really enjoyed. And now I'll hand it over to Shraddha.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Reshma. Yeah, Reshma, you've been so patient. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Reshma.
My absolute pleasure. You've made my entire month. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. What a wonderful session. And I've also ordered my book while I was just, in the session. On behalf of the foundation, I would like to thank Mr. Rakeysh Omprakash Mehra, Ms. Reeta Ramamurthy Gupta, and Ms. Rishma Gill for this engrossing session. You leave us today with a very different perspective of human lives, unraveling so many emotions. Last, I would also like to thank our presenter, Sri Cement Limited. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our patrons who have made these sessions possible, even during these difficult times. Stay well, stay safe. Goodbye, good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you for keeping literature alive. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Thank you.